This is just Jenny, and this is Wednesday, April 1st. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Usually when I discuss and argue the issue with abortion, I stay in a very sterile, cold place, which is the Declaration of Independence, the basic truths espoused there, the entire structure of our legal system and the Constitution, and how if you want to logically progress from liberty on any level, it can only be from that point of Creator granted life and liberty at the moment of creation. But today I'm going to dabble in the emotional aspects of pregnancy and abortion and giving birth. One thing, we have a lot of funerals at our church in West End. I go to Good Shepherd Community Church, and my pastor is Richard Wright, who is basically the greatest. And he's the greatest not because in and of himself he's so wonderful, but he's the greatest because he has mastered, by God's grace, he empties himself of himself so that he can be a conduit for God's grace and wisdom and rebuke and provision for everyone around him. He is an amazing shepherd. And he has such love for his flock. Not that delusional love, where everybody's so wonderful and blah, blah, blah. He sees us all for what we are. And he is the type that will call you when he's exhausted to check on you and make sure you're all right. And will let you have it, whether it's from the pulpit or in his study, when you need to be let have it, which, as y'all can imagine, I need to be let have it quite often. Pastor Brett probably doesn't have the amount of time to let me have it as often as I need it, but he does occasionally, get it done. And he just trusts the Lord so much. Well, I say all of that to say this. When you are living in a community of deprivation, you experience God and miracles and provision of God in a way you cannot experience God when you are living in a situation where everyone really can pay their bills and live a pretty decent life. I mean, you get frustrated over things like not having the laundry done, or what's for dinner, or your husband didn't like the new recipe you tried. I mean, this is a totally different type of problem. Or when you tighten your belt, you don't go out to eat, or you don't take that $1,800 vacation to the beach. It's a different world when you really are experiencing constant deprivation. And this is the sector of society that's most fragile and vulnerable to abortion, which is such a lie from the pit of hell. It's Satan saying, you don't have a choice. You're backed in a corner. You can't even provide food for the children that you have. And instead of throwing yourself on the Lord, in our society today, our morally bankrupt society, you're actually socially irresponsible if you don't have an abortion, if you're poor and you don't recognize that you are incapable of taking care of your children. I don't really care if you're rich or you're poor, you're incapable of taking care of your children. Because in an instant, your life can change radically. So many people that live a middle class existence are a couple of paychecks away from the streets, are a couple of paychecks away from deprivation. But you stay cocooned and sheltered because you don't lose your job. Deprivation is an opportunity to trust the Lord. And one thing that I love is hearing the testimony of people who raised their children before the abortion holocaust of America began. And they talk about having nothing and having 12 children. And what it was, my grandmother used to tell stories about my great-grandmother when their dad was a drunk, a horrible drunk. And my great-grandmother had an uncle who said, if you will only leave your husband, I will take complete care of you, who's very wealthy. I'll provide for your every need. And she refused. And she said, no, I made a vow to God to stay married to this man, and that's what I'm going to do. And she threw herself at the feet of the Lord. And the miracles that would happen when they had no food, and they would all get down on their knees to pray, and a truck would break down and they would have milk, or a neighbor would say, here's $10 to go get some groceries. The Lord would provide. And so today we are living in a difficult time because of the horror of the Federal Reserve System and the horror of the elitists that are becoming richer and advancing a genocide agenda against the poor and the most fragile of our society. And what I want to urgently tell you is that the media is starting to play this thing that Planned Parenthood provides a necessary evil. It is not necessary to snuff out the life of a child. But what is necessary is that these families don't know the Lord. They don't know going to the Heavenly Father and saying, Abba, Father. And in that time of great loneliness and deprivation, when you're pregnant and you don't know how you're going to make it, the ability to get on your knees and to pray for hours expectantly and know that God is going to provide for you is the richest thing you can ever experience. And I say that not from an ivory tower, because I see this, and I deal with some of these children whose moms are strung out on drugs or can't provide or don't know the way and can't take them to the Lord. I've taught children how to pray to the Lord for the first time. I've listened to them, end their prayers, sincerely yours, to the Lord. And it's a peace that they don't have yet. And when we enable doctors to set up clinics that are legitimized by law to seek actively their prey amongst the most vulnerable and impoverished of our society, and we look the other way and say, I would never choose that, but I cannot deny them the ability to make that choice, you are in effect saying, I will not love my neighbor as myself, and by her going and having an abortion, it has just enabled me to not love her as myself. It's a problem when somebody doesn't have an abortion. It's a problem for that community in that church if you don't know God. It's an opportunity if you know God. So today I want to just leave you with this thought. The legislators of Georgia are perpetrating an evil against the unborn of Georgia, but also against the mothers of Georgia, because they are legitimizing a trade that is intrinsically evil and murderous as a necessary but sad alternative to coming into a new relationship with the Lord and looking to Him to provide for their children and their families and get connected in their community churches. And when we look the other way and excuse and come up with reasons why we cannot end prenatal murder, we are part and parcel to that evil. That's just Jenny, and I'll see you tomorrow.